Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of King Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Root, and we're live on Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting. It's Thursday, November the 2nd. I hope you all had a happy Halloween. I hope it was wonderful and scary. And I want to thank Alex Exon for putting on the Karen 6 years of Halloween shows he did, and that one was pretty epic. So if you missed that, I'm pretty sure you can hear the replays if you want to. I don't know. You just got to go to his website, acclaim.Dr. Also want to thank our sponsor, southernsugarleaf.com, marydustina.com, and Centropics at fringe.fm/bioenergy. And so, we've been doing this broadcast live and across the United States since, I want to say like 2015, 2016, something like that. And for all of you guys that have been here since the beginning, God bless you, man. I don't know how you stay with anybody that long. Like, I'm no Art Bell or what do you call it, John B. Wells or anybody like that. But some of you have. I actually got some emails from you. So thank you. And if you want to, if you want to have anyone on the show, or if you want to have the show on your local radio station or whatever, you can email producer at fringe.fm or the actual producer of the show, John Marshall. That's Jon, John Marshall at fringe.fm. So tonight we're going to be talking about encounters, and we're going to have Dr. Diana Walsh Pasulka will be on here, who has wrote some fabulous books on the subject. Encounters is the new one that's coming out this month. Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligence. But before, she wrote a book called American Cosmic, which I'm not sure if we talked to her or not. I feel like I've talked to her before. But here's the thing. I go back into the podcast archive, and I know I've talked to some of these people before, and it's gone. Even on YouTube. The only thing is YouTube will tell me when they take down stuff. Now, I've got probably almost 1,000 episodes of the show, and every week I get a new, I mean, this is probably no surprise to you, but every week I get a new email about how YouTube has taken down another one of my shows. For what, man? Because we talked about something that was controversial, but I'm not sure. The last one that got taken down was when I was talking to Frank Castle. So you guys that are downloading the show, we get a few thousand downloads every episode. You guys that are doing that, I would keep doing that. YouTube's the easiest route, of course, but I don't upload every single show to YouTube anymore just because of that. I wish I could. I wish I had like a YouTube manager or somebody that knew how to take care of that kind of stuff because, we do plenty. We do fine over here. Make sure you download the Fringe FM app too, and it's a lot easier to listen to the show. But if you don't want to download the app or leave a shout out or anything, you can go to fringe.fm and just hit the big fat play button on the website. So what is it with encounters, right? Like, the thing about encounters is, how do we define them? Now, I know that we've all heard this close encounters, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, but is it really that simple? I wonder if it really is that simple. I remember having encounters myself when I was a child, and even some when I was having out-of-body experiences, but the thing is how do we define encounters now that there's so much research on non-human intelligence and consciousness now? But specifically, I believe tonight we're going to be talking about encounters with UFOs and UAPs and kind of the things that happen around those events. Now, I don't think, everybody that I've talked to has had some kind of story where they might have been abducted by aliens, so I'll tell you mine. When I was a kid, this is kind of the same thing that happened, and a lot of stuff happened when I was a kid to me. But I believe I don't know. See, and I'll never know if there was a UFO in the sky when this happened. But when I was a kid, I remember seeing these like long-legged being things like going across the window. I thought for a minute, I was like, man, that's got to be a tree or something. But I was already freaking myself out as a child. If you remember correctly, I've told you guys about this a million times. I would freak myself out as a child. But this specific time, I saw some things walking across the backside of my house. Now, I wasn't at bedtime, I wasn't able to run outside and see if there was a UFO or anything. I wish I would have, but I didn't. And that's all I remember. Just these long, lanky, shadowy looking things walking in the backyard. The only other thing I remember I'm just talking about aliens, specifically aliens, okay? Like something that would resemble an alien thing. Because I don't have a really fantastic story about how I think I was abducted by aliens. But in a dream state, and I'm sure Whitley Strieber could probably talk about this a little bit more than I can, I do remember slipping in and out of a dream around that same time. I don't know if it was the same night. I got to be honest with you. And it felt like I was on some kind of table, like I was looking at myself being operated on by these lanky beings. But I would talk to my parents about it, man. I would talk to my dad, and my stepmom at the time. And I was like, hey, I saw this stuff, man. What is that? Like, I didn't see this on any TV show or anything. So what is that? And you always tell me, well, that's my brain. That's just your brain. That's just your mind. Well, we know that's not true now, right? Today, I follow a lot of different podcasts. Some are about fighting. Some are about relationships. Other ones are about paranormal stuff. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with who Boss Rutan is. Probably one of the toughest guys on the planet. Super tough. He starts talking about the same thing. Now, he didn't see a UFO or anything, but he definitely had an encounter. A UFO sighting is something that, like a true sighting of a UFO, where I can say that I saw something that did not belong in the sky. That I could definitely say wasn't a satellite or wasn't space stuff or something. I've always wanted to see one. The only thing that I ever saw that, other than what my son chased across the yard, which it looked like it was either two satellites or two UFOs. I saw those. But I could say if I had an encounter with something in the sky, it would probably be about 2014, where I used to paint houses at night because it was easy. Right? During the daytime, everybody's doing their thing. There's traffic, whatever. I was a nighttime guy. I go out there at night. Nobody's around, just me in the house and the radio. And I remember it was the first time I was listening to that book, The Emerald Tablets of Thoth. The first time. So I'm in this house all alone in this cul-de-sac. It's about midnight, but the sky is pretty wide open. And I'm cutting in the tops under the crown molding, just listening to this, like Emerald Tablets of Thoth thing. And it's the first time you hear that, Emerald Tablets of Thoth. It's a pretty fascinating thing, but I wouldn't say there's any evidence to back it up, but it's pretty fascinating to listen to. And so I go outside. I used to take, a 10-minute break, a 30-minute lunch, and another 10-minute break because I work 8 hours. So I go outside during a break and I look up at the sky and I see what seems to be like one of the brightest stars in the sky I've ever seen. And my mind is like, well, that's not Venus. It's definitely not Jupiter. It's bigger than Jupiter. So I thought maybe it's an airplane. Maybe there's clouds in the sky. And it just shined. It seemed like it was just shining right over me. And I looked at it, and for a moment, I thought to myself, this is some kind of weird message, or this is freaky. And then it just disappeared, faded, gone, right? Now, there could be all kinds of phenomena that could, like actual explainable things that could happen for that to happen. But I still think to this day it was something weird because there was no clouds in the sky. It wasn't an airplane. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a planet. I watched it long enough after it disappeared to see if it was some kind of anomaly or just some kind of weird thing that I missed in the sky, and it wasn't. And I think that thing set me on the path, right? So a lot of times when I think about encounters, and I am no expert in this field, that's why we're going to be talking to our guest tonight. I wonder if there's two things that happen, right? One thing that happens is what really happens, what we don't know, right? Something that we don't have an explanation for. And this is just my opinion. And the second thing that happens is the stories or how our brain perceives what's going on. Like, what is it? Just like the story I just told you. Like, I don't know what that was, but I did tell myself that it was something special, and maybe it was. But I've never studied this subject thoroughly. And Diana Pasulka has wrote a book about encounters, experiences with non-human intelligence. And she brings to the incomplete study of an unidentified phenomenon the missing parts that make it tick, a subtle carrying way to transcend the rough political and military turmoil that has long disfigured the research, and a formal framework for the spiritual reinterpretation of what the witnesses say. Her book is a staircase to the top level. This is something that we got to get back into ever since the hearing. I don't think this is something we should be ignoring. For a long, long time, there was a lull of UFO topics. Like, I just didn't talk about it on the show, not that much, because it felt like we were going in circles. But now I think we're getting we're getting somewhere with this stuff. Because people are starting to ask the right questions. Let's see. I want to see who we got coming up in the broadcast next week. I think Richard West is coming back. We also we had to reschedule Dave Cruz. We had to reschedule Nancy Euro, and Jeff Harmon's going to be on next week too. He's got some more messages he wants to talk to us about that he says that are important. Lori Spagna's going to be here with us as well. And so I guess what I'm saying is I've only had a few experiences with this. I'm so curious about this subject because my experiences are so limited compared to some of the stories that I've heard. All of my experiences have been through consciousness or the out-of-body stuff or in the hypnagogic state, possibly magically, if you want to look at it that way, is what some people would call it. But as far as the UFO in the sky is concerned, I go out every single night. I don't have a telescope. I don't have any equipment. And I look into the sky. The night sky is like my favorite thing to look at. Calms me down. I could be going through the worst thing in the world, and if the night sky is pretty enough, it'll help me. I've yet to, not that I want to have an experience, don't get me wrong, I don't want to get freaked out, or some of these stories are pretty freaky. But one day I would like to see something where I know for sure that I had some type of UFO or UAP encounter, for certain, without question. And I've seen so many videos on Facebook and Twitter and all this other stuff, man, where people are, they're just magnifying balloons and things like that. And what I'm trying to say is there are people that are doing real research in this field. And I think we should help these people and back them. Like I always believed UFO Seekers was really doing good work. I believe what Diana is doing is good work. You have to have a rational mind when it comes to this stuff. because we've been fanatically following things for a while. Now there's plenty of evidence beyond. I mean, it's beyond evident that this is a real thing. So anyways, we're already at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a break. We're going to get our guest on tonight. Make sure you download the Fringe FM app. Donate to the Fringe FM if you can. We can always use your support. We get by your support. Any sponsorships, podcasters, if you want to do a show, we have a monthly due that you can pay to be on the Fringe FM. It's very cheap. You run your own live show if you want to, and podcast as well. And that helps support. All of these things help support the radio station. And we always have been functioning on your support. So go to the website, fringe.fm. Make sure you email producer at fringe.fm if you want to have a guest on the show. And the call-in number for tonight is, as always, is 501-777-5631. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void Radio. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're live on the Fringe FM. And we're about to get into this awesome subject. I'm stoked. And if you want to go to the website, and Diana, I want to make sure that I'm saying this right so I don't say this wrong, right? Because I've done this before, right? It's
no problem.
It's Dr. Diana Pasulka. Is that how you pronounce it? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. But you can call me just Diana.
Cool. All right, cool. So the website is dwpasulka.com. I remember when you wrote American Cosmic, and I got the book, and I don't remember if you came on the show or not, but I remember thinking, man, this person is really doing some good work in this field. Like, I'm kind of selective about who I talk to when it comes to the UFO field, and I really, really think what you're doing is fantastic. I just wanted to tell you that, by the way. Can't help it.
Oh, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
So your new book, Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligence. Tell us about this book. This is one that's just about to come. It's coming out right now, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it's coming out in next Tuesday, November 7th. And I just saw, actually, just before I came on the show, that it went to #1 in the category of UFOs for the audio.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah. So Encounters is #2 book about UFOs that I've written. I'm a professor of religion at the University of North Carolina here in Wilmington. And so I came to the topic completely by accident, studying religion, believe it or not. And I started in 2012, and I have a PhD in religious studies. And so, so I wrote American Cosmic, and it was an academic book. I thought it was, I'd already published a lot, had been a professor here for 20 years, basically. So I was, I'd never thought about UFOs before. And then I'd done this study of aerial phenomena in the Catholic historical tradition from 1200 on up to about 1800. And a friend of mine said, this is like UFOs. And it just hit me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. What have I been studying? So that's how American Cosmic started. And immediately I met people from, the government. The government hadn't come out yet and said, we're still doing this study. So I met a lot of these people. I didn't seek them out. They actually sought me out. And so that's how the book started. And then it was published in 2019. The Pentagon published a report about UFOs in 2021, and I was writing the next book, Encounters, which is a deep dive into, credible witnesses, people in aerial, doing aeronautic research in aviation, people in AI, and just what they know.
So this whole thing about what I liked about American Cosmic was that in that book, you discussed how the media has made it like, only the fringy or the crazy people believe in UFOs. Well, this stuff is really, people are really, this is really happening. People are having real experiences. Like, we don't really give this serious thought like we should. And then Encounters is, do you think as Encounters more, are you writing more about, is it still about the UFOs, or is it about, I guess, what happens to people when they have encounters, because I always wondered, I don't even know how to define all these different encounters. I've heard so many stories of encounters, and I know you probably have too. Well, this thing happened to me and I saw this thing and then there was a UFO in the sky. Is it about that, or is it about like some real, like legitimate evidence that you're tapped into?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. And the answer to the question is it's about both. So when a person sees something in the sky, like objective evidence, so I start by talking about a person's objective sighting of something that can be identified on radar. So, a lot like I go over the Brockport UFO event that happened in upstate New York in the 1960s. And I talked to witnesses of that and did a lot of, just looking at it. And so what you get objective evidence, which is that people are actually seeing things in the sky that they can't identify. A lot of those things then are correlated with radar, and today they're actually correlated with the best intelligence systems we have for identifying what is in the sky. And so, we have very sophisticated systems now that we didn't have in the 1960s. But accompanying that data, which is objective, is you get subjective experiences that people have on the ground, even if they haven't seen the UFO or the UAP, as we call them now. So, so we've got this data set. And so as a professor, what I do is I basically take data and I look for patterns. And so this encounters was basically showing that along with the data set, the first data set that we have today, which is, the objective radar and plus the sighting, you also have these experiences that people have. So what I did was I just about their experiences and they correlated. So every single person in the book represents, like now I've talked to thousands of people who've had these experiences, and most of them won't want to come out and be known. Okay. Because, it's still a stigma. People are still stigmatized for talking about it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate that it's that way, but I can understand that. And I think, do you think that just based on what you've studied, do you think that we're close to, I don't want to call it a disclosure because everybody talks about that, but something, I would hope it would be something more, right? Like so for instance, I give an example, like Elon Musk talks about, well, I've shot all kinds of rockets off. I haven't seen any aliens, but he's not really, but then you have all these fighter pilots that say, I've saw things that, defy physics. Right. And then you got all these people that say they saw stuff in the sky or they had this experience. Like, what do you think is the one thing that's like hindering this progress? The biggest thing that's hindering our progress in this field?
Well, we do have government programs that have created the stigma recall. So we do have like Project Blue Book, which lasted a long time from, the 1950s on through the late 60s, I think it's 1969. And that the job of that program was basically to discredit UFOs. And, they study them, but also to discredit. And they use the media to do that. All right. So we would be naive to think that that's not happening now. I also want to point out that Elon creates the rockets that classified satellites go up in, but he's not part of mission control. So he does have government people who regulate what he can see and can't see. And most people don't know that because, Elon is Elon. He's just a brilliant billionaire, one of the richest, the richest man in the world. Who's going to question him? But that's actually the case. What I just said is true. So, so he doesn't actually have a need to know this stuff. And a lot of this stuff, because it does happen in space or in the atmosphere, in our skies, there's regulation. It's been regulated. Part of the reason it's coming out now is because other countries, other than Russia and us, we were the only viable space programs, right? Since humans have been in space, basically. Well, now China's going into space. Other countries have space programs. So we can't regulate them. So, of course, we're going to have to disclosure has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder when it happens. I think there's going to be some real chaos that happens. Well, I mean, with the media, as it always is. But do you, based on your studies in this, is there, from what people have told you, and I know you could probably only talk about so much, but is there a specific type of encounter? What I mean by that is sometimes I wonder when people have these encounters, if it's a conscious, like if it has something to do with their consciousness, right? And I'm only asked these questions because I've only talked to a few UFO people. So are these people wide awake for the most part when they see this stuff, or are they sometimes usually in between like sleep states? A lot of the stories I've read, they're like in the house, they're falling asleep, or they're in their bed, which to me does not discredit that at all. Like, I think we're just more susceptible to things in that state, but I still have a curiosity about it. You know what I mean?
Of course. I think that you have a variety. When you ask, is it a consciousness thing? Absolutely it is. So in American Cosmic, one of the first things, by the way, I was really shocked to find all of this out because, as I said, I was kind of a normal professor doing my work, not even thinking about UFOs, didn't even have a thought about them, to tell you the truth, other than that I thought it was weird, you know? And all of a sudden, when this all happened, I was approached by people who were part of our Space Force. And basically, they were coming to ask me about my research. And they said that consciousness is the next frontier for breakthroughs in this field. And I really didn't understand it at the time. I thought it was really weird. I get it now that I've been doing this work for, since 2012. Basically, I get it. So what I was doing was I was going through the Catholic and the Christian tradition of history, right? And I was looking at experiences that people had, about angels, about souls in purgatory, near-death experiences, things like that. And I was basically taking data and looking at that. And this is what these people were interested in. They want to know, who are the people that see these things? Is there something demographically different about them? Like, is their consciousness different, or, do they think differently, or are their characters different? And so this is the kind of data that I actually had.
That's interesting that you talk about the spiritual thing too, because I wonder if does those blend, do they kind of blend together? The chronological stories of the Bible and what happened in history and all of these things. Because I mean, I don't want to get too far out there, but there is a theory that we were seeded by certain beings and stuff, and they talk about that these beings are being in the Bible, men of renown. There's been all kinds of different names for them, fallen angels, stuff like that. Do you think any of this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think any of this stuff goes together?
Definitely, they go together. Now, okay, so this is another thing that happened to me. So I've been, in my field, you can be religious, but you don't have to be. Religion has nothing to do, like our belief structure, spiritual belief structure has nothing to do with what our job is. We're basically like archaeologists or sociologists, historians. So we don't, that's how we look at religion. My belief in anything doesn't actually impact what I study. Sure. But what happened was what I studied impacted my belief. And so I started, I've been a religious person. I, went to church and this kind of thing, but after I started to study this, when I was in church, I started to listen to what people were saying. And, when they were reading the Bible, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is real, like back in the day, I was studying this stuff as if it were historical and didn't impact my life, and it wasn't real. And then after this, I recognized that, what? There's a tangibility to this. This stuff is actually real. I think I'd better pay attention.
Yeah, because now there's all kinds of theories with like AI and stuff like that too, right? It gets so, yes. I mean, it gets so out there. I don't know, like if a person sees a being, right? The most common being, I don't know, still today is what? Probably a gray being or something like that. Is that still the most common thing people see?
Yeah, it's definitely, I've met many people who saw grays. I think the most common thing is a short, kind of like a gray, but shiny, kind of like glowing.
Wow. Is there any parallels that you're finding with this, or are these just like completely I mean, I'm doing this for my own curiosity because I'd love to see this, but I'm terrified at the same time. Like, is there any like parallels that you find that, well, at least certain demographic, a certain age, or does it seem to just be like completely
definitely.
random?
Yeah. No, it's not random. I mean, I don't know exactly how it works, but I do know that people who have these experiences, a lot of times it happens when they're kids. And strangely enough, when you look at miraculous events in the Christian tradition, a lot of times those also happen to children. And so, and in fact, part of my research, even though I didn't know it at the time, I was examining the near-death experiences of children from 1600 up until about 1800. And the children would often see things like this. And I didn't actually, because I didn't think about UFOs then, I didn't know, I didn't think of it. I just took the data. And so I'd been contacted by people from aerospace industries. And when they contacted me, they'd always say, hey, I want to read this paper that you wrote about, kids and angels. And I always thought, why do they want to know about that? Honestly, I thought it was just very weird. But actually, the demographic points to people who have characters that are childlike. A lot of times when those children grow up, they lose the connection.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, because I had some weird stuff happen to me when I was a kid too, but I don't know. I threw it off as like, well, that's probably all in my head or something, some pretty terrifying stuff actually. But so that was another question I was going to ask you. Do you find that a lot of people are fearful, or because you hear all these different stories?
Yes, they're fearful. Absolutely, it's scary. I think it's traumatizing. In fact.
Yeah, I think so too. Because, I mean, we get a little woo in it in the spiritual community. Oh, they're beings from the fifth or whatever. They're here to, like, help us and stuff like that. But most of the time, I have a hard time believing, like, because if I'm a grown-up, right, if I saw something like that, I'd be terrified. So I can't imagine,
me too.
I can't imagine, like, how a child would feel. It doesn't feel like a spiritual, happy thing to me, No.
So that's another thing that I hate to be the bringer of bad news. But, a lot of people are thinking that they might be advanced beings. They're here to help us. They're here to bring us, salvation and this type of thing. But I don't see that, after, like I said, looking at thousands of these reports and, for the most part, some are really amazing and a good portion are not. And sometimes people actually get hurt, right? They have like I wouldn't call it radiation because I don't know what it is, but it looks like a burn, like they get burned and things like that.
Explain to me, like, what do you mean by a burn? What do you mean by that?
Okay. So, all right. So what you get, and you also would get this with some of the historical cases, which I didn't quite get at the time because they didn't have language to say, that this was a burn, but it looked like that, from what I know now, that's what it looks like happened. And so you'll get, a lot of people say they're driving down a highway, a UFO comes along and their car shuts down or something like that. And then they develop burns, like they develop
like radiation.
What you call, well, it seems like it, but I'm not sure if it's radiation. So, many of these people are being studied, like what kind of injury is this that they have? It's not a deadly injury. But it does happen. And so many cases show that, people do get this. Another thing that happens is that when people are looking at, say a person sees the things in the sky, I'll call them crafts. They see the crafts and their eyes hurt afterwards. It's almost as it burns their retina, their eyes or something like that. There's some type of light accompanying these sightings.
So do you think that, I mean, I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but like based on your studies from religion to now, right? Now that we got AI and technology and all this stuff, and this stuff is still happening, I think a lot of us think it's like War of the Worlds, that there's these aliens that come from different planets and they're just flying around in our planet and then they go back home. I'm under the impression that this is like a possibly some kind of interdimensional thing that we don't understand, And I'm just curious if what your thoughts are on that.
Yes. So, okay, that's one of the theories. I tend to agree with that myself, actually. But a lot of people, now that I've met a lot of people like Hal Puthoff, a physicist, Eric Davis, a physicist who does study into this, and Gary Nolan, Stanford University professor, as well as people who don't want to be named, but are as credible.
Yeah.
And they all have different opinions about so some of them have the same opinion, like, Eric and Hal tend to think similarly, but they do differ. And, Hal Puthoff has this idea that actually, if you do a internet search for, it's called his ultra terrestrial paper. It's a paper on what I think he calls it ultra terrestrials. And basically he goes through like a history of what people have thought about what this is, people who studied it. And his idea is that it might actually strangely be terrestrial. So it might be in our own atmosphere, and it could somehow access different ways that go beyond the physics that we're aware of, like, portals or things like that, and then show up. So there could be that. There's another really interesting hypothesis that NASA historian Stephen Dick proposed. He's been a historian for 40 years for NASA, and he's also an astronomer. So he's really well positioned for this role that he has. And I've read pretty much everything that he's written, and it's changed through time. But in about 20 years ago, he started to talk about AI, and he suggested that he speculated that if we meet AI, if we meet ET, we will be meeting their technology, or they will be technology. And he conjectured that they would be AI. And he does that through looking at our own progress with technology. And he says, if you take us and you project us 1,000,000 years into the future, or 100,000 years into the future, perhaps we are going to be AI. And so he's saying that, civilizations that actually make it past the point where, because there could be a point where we eradicate ourselves. But if we get beyond that point, we're going to be very technologically advanced, and maybe even augment ourselves in order to go into space. And he said that if you take that trajectory, it makes logical sense then that we might be meeting these ETs, but they are AI. They're an AI.
God, that's crazy to think about. So then if that's the case, then it's possible that we would be, this whole thing is like some type of growth thing, right? That's what freaks me out. Yeah. Like we're some big science experiment.
Well, I don't know about that. It's an evolutionary idea. It definitely has assumptions of evolution in there. So, but there are other people that I know who are credible who think that we are some type of experiment. I tend not to think that way. I don't know. There's something in me that resists that interpretation pretty strongly.
Yeah, because I know it's in our nature to think that, I was brought up religious to think there's something more. I've always thought that. I still believe that. But there's always this, like,
me too. Yeah.
There's still like this question in the back of my mind that I hate. I don't entertain it too much because it freaks me out. It's like, well, if you look at everything rationally and logically and just do it in that sense, this looks like just some big, a very advanced experiment, right? Like to try to grow us into being,
long-term experiment. Yeah. That's what Jacques Vallée sometimes says, mostly. He has this, I don't know if you're aware of his work, but he has this hypothesis of that it's the control mechanism hypothesis, that they show up and kind of control us at the symbolic level. When these things happen, we're changed. And he thinks that it's like almost like a feedback mechanism.
I see what you're saying. Like it's a loop. Feedback loop or something. Loop. Yeah. It's a control mechanism. And he sees it very much like he also thinks of it technologically.
like it's some kind of technology that's doing this to us, you know. And again, in my book, American Cosmic, Tyler, who's fascinating, he believes that we are actually biotechnology, that humans are biotechnology.
That makes sense. Like we're some form of a technology that we don't understand. That's more about biochemistry than it is, I don't know, electricity and ones and zeros, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we're going to merge into something that represents both, I guess, or maybe a technology we don't understand. That I'm telling you, Diana, if I start thinking about this stuff too much, I'll freak myself out, right? Because I just do that. Maybe that's why I don't talk about UFOs that much, because it freaks me out.
Yeah, Joe, you should like call me up if that happens, and I'll help you through it.
Right? It freaks me out. Like, and you know, looking at your work too, I can see that, you know, you went from, I mean, back in 2018, you wrote a book called Posthumanism, The Future of Homo Sapiens, right? Or you were part of it?
That's right. Yes.
So
yeah.
Do you not see that that's like happening though, for real? I mean, you wrote about it.
Oh, for sure. I've written about it. Yeah. So that's mostly, I mean, honestly, that's a lot of what I've been doing. I'm looking at the intersection of religion and technology. So, and I already believe that we are co-evolving with technology because, I mean, I've written all my work on that, by the way, is free and anybody could read it. It's on a site called acclaim.Dr. And you can look it up under my name, and you just need to, it's a free site, but you have to put in it like, you have to sign up for it. Yeah. But yes. So if anybody actually wants to look into that, I've written a ton about it with people who are doing this. I partnered with them, and everything we do, Joe, I mean, right now, when we go watch a movie, we are being physiologically impacted and changed through watching that movie. Our memories are changing, everything. So we're already that hooked up to technology.
See, how much? So, I mean, I don't know how to do it because I don't like talking too much about religion and stuff, but I think that I still think there's something to like the spiritual realm, obviously, because I talk about that quite a bit, right? But I do wonder sometimes, like, you know, things that we call out of body experiences, which I've had, all kinds of different experiences that we have, even encounters, you know, people say, or synchronicities or magic or whatever. I wonder sometimes if it's not just simply, it's going to sound weird, but like a technology that we don't understand yet. That's why we call it all these different names. You know, if I was to take a cell phone back in the 1880s, they would hang me, you know? So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I think it would.
I think I could help you out here. Okay. So what you basically need to understand is that what we call artificial technology is not actually artificial. Okay. So we don't take a hammer and say, hey, this is artificial technology, right? We're using the hammer. Okay. And, you know, so, you know, even language, we developed language at some point. Well, that's not artificial. That's
right.
Just ways in which we, you know, utilize our environments to make life better for ourselves. So, so when we talk about spirituality, we tend to avoid it from, we say, okay, my computer is not intrinsically spiritual. It doesn't have any kind of soul. It's not spiritual, right? However, what if there is a technology that humans then become associated with, a part of, because we are actually a part of our technologies today. We do know that, say, for example, TikTok changes the attention span of young kids. We know that for a fact. It also does some things to their brains, you know, that, and their brain development. So yes, these are things we have to be absolutely concerned about right now. And I believe that we can't stop this from happening, right? It's part of how we're, you know, exploring our environment or just, you know, adapting to our environment. Part of it is to do it technologically. However, why isn't something like character, like a good character, virtues like goodness, you know, why do we exempt them from also being somehow utilitarian and something technological? what if, so my research shows that a lot of people who are having these experiences have extremely good characters. They happen to be really good people. And why is it then that it's those people that this technology, what we'd call advanced technology, like the UFO or the UAP, why is it interfacing with them more than other general populace type people? So I think that there is a quality that we're not giving credit to, and that's the fact that a lot of these experiences happen to people who are transforming their characters. And character actually is way more important than we give it credit.
Yeah, in a society where what matters and is mostly superficial and mostly resourceful, character is it does seem like character is getting the back. What is it called? Like it's getting put on the back burner. But you're saying people that have a certain character are having these experiences. That's pretty interesting.
Yes, exactly. And it could very well be, like, if we were to look at it purely like as natural selection and adaptive, it seems that the good people are getting adapted to be better people and passing these traits on to their children. And don't you think that's probably a good thing?
Yeah, most definitely. It still freaks me out that it could be a program, but it's still a good thing, right? Like it could be a program for sure. Yeah, right. Like, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, certain of the things, okay, so some of the people in AI who I met really changed the way I thought about this whole thing. And one was this idea of that somehow our characters are cryptographic, right? Somehow our characters are like a cryptography, right? In the sense that if there's a person who has this character that's good, certain events are going to happen to them, like almost as if 2 + 2 = 4, right? So somehow, so maybe it's the case that Siddhartha Buddha back in the day, or Jesus back in the day, was trying to teach this to us. And maybe something like the 10 Commandments were there to create a population of people where they could have contact with these beings that happen to be good and good for us, and they're just training our bodies and our minds to be able to receive this.
That makes sense. I want to get into that a little bit more. That makes a heck of a lot of sense too. But we're at the top of the hour. You go to the website at dwpasulka.com. Check out all our books, especially our new one, Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligence, which comes out on the 7th, but you can get it now, pre-order it now. It's also on Audible. Go to the website, dwpasulka.com. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Diana Pasulka is here with us, a fantastic author. You can go to her website, check out her books at dwpasulka.com. That's PASULKA.com. You can check out her books, Heaven Can Wait, Purgatory and a Catholic Devotional Popular Culture, American Cosmic, UFOs, Religion and Technology, and her new book that's out now, Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligence. And the conversation always gets deeper as the night goes on, and Diana, I really appreciate you coming on the late night here with us. It's a special thing, these late night people, so we do appreciate it.
Yes, I definitely agree.
That's what John Denver said anyways. He wrote a song about late night radio. You got to check it out. What you guys get time, type in John Denver late night radio. You'll trip out on it. So here's the thing. So AI is freaking out everybody. When I told you this before the break, it freaks me out to think that we could be a part of some, I don't know, experiment, right? Like that we're being observed by aliens and we were seeded and now we're being experimented with. And it makes me wonder about consciousness and stuff too. But when I listen to the AI people talk about these things like on YouTube, well, I mean, I'll just ask you, does it give you hope or does it freak you out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that, okay, so of course, I'm looking at technology, and of course I'll be talking to people in the AI community. And what happened was when American Cosmic came out, I was flooded with correspondence from the people who you would know. Their name, these people you would know who they are. People who created our technology. And they reached out to me because they had UFO experiences. And they believed that the technology that they had created were actually part of some type of thing that was happening with UFO experiences that they had. So I would get invited to their lush places, all over the world. And so I learned from these, and some of them I became friends with. And one of the people I became friends with is named Simone. And she was, she's been doing this for about 25 years. She was into Bitcoin when it began, and she was able to retire by the time she was 30. And so she works with all of these people that, like I said, if I were to say who they were, you would all know who they were. And she took the time to kind of talk to me about their belief system and, what they know. Like, she's really into quantum AI, which is now, in a sense, the most deeply fascinating AI that's happening. We got these generative models and, the chats that are happening, and we're all using those, and, they're really interesting and so forth. But quantum AI is a completely different thing, because what it's doing is it's going quantum, right? So it's getting into this dimensionality that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And so, so she was telling me that when you start to look, and by the way, Simone is also, she's featured in Encounters, but she's also as educated as I am about religion. Like, she was raised Catholic. She was mystical Catholic. She had this process that Tyler had called downloading, where she would just know information, and therefore she was extraordinarily intelligent, like really brilliant, a genius. And she wouldn't have to work at it. It would just come to her. So she believes that the human being is a form of intelligence. She hates that word, artificial intelligence, but she says that we are a container for this intelligence. We receive it. And a lot of it has to do with when I started to get into the people who are really good at what I call downloading information. They would practice these things that I call protocols, in the sense that they cared for their bodies. They slept a lot. They hydrated themselves. And I knew that this was something that people practice in religious traditions from thousands of years. But she explained the science behind it. She said the reason that they have to hydrate themselves is because water is a conductor. And we're talking about knowledge being electrical. Like, it's electrical information that's going through our bodies. And if our water in our bodies, if we're dehydrated, we can't do it. If we're hydrated, we have to be hydrated at the correct pH level. So, I mean, she was just really getting deep down into the ways in which our own bodies function this way. So this started to get me out, because I had been super depressed, I guess you could say, by a lot of what I learned about the government cover-up of UFOs and just how organized it was, and just really, some very, very dark communities of people in the government who I came across and met, and that was really depressing to me. I think one of the more depressing things about my study was that this group existed, and that they kind of control what we perceive, social media, a lot of stuff. And it was really depressing for me to learn that, more so actually than thinking that there were aliens. And so she was able to describe to me how knowledge has always been wanting to be democratic and decentralized, and how there was always this group that tried to keep knowledge for themselves. And she's partially French. And so she knows about like the French Revolution in the 1700s. And she basically said that it was a revolution of knowledge. So before that, people weren't allowed to be educated or read, or they weren't allowed to read the Bible or do all the stuff. And she basically said, we're going through that now with AI. She says, do not believe the doomers of AI who are telling us that it's going to do this and that. She said, this is a revolutionary decentralizing movement, and it's all going to help the little guy. It's going to help us. Right. And, so that changed how I thought about this.
Damn. Yeah. Well, you got depressed because of the repression of information. Like, it seemed impossible that the truth would ever come out regardless.
Yes.
I know what you're feeling.
Yeah. It seemed totally structural, in fact, because of what I've learned in my life. From, I don't know if you know anything about Plato and the allegory of the cave, and, how that's been like rethought of as like the Matrix and things like that. But, the movie, The Matrix. So it just seemed like, Plato is asking 2,500 years ago, he's basically saying, can we ever have a just society? And he didn't think so. So he basically said there's a structural component to society where there will always be brutal injustice. And what can good people do? Well, basically, it doesn't look like they can do a lot, but they could do some things. And so he proposes at the end of it this really interesting, almost like a mystical way of getting out of it. But I mean, it's a hardcore thing to do, Joe. You see it again with Jesus. Jesus is doing the same thing. He's telling his communities, the only way you're going to get out of this is by this mystical connection to the good, which is God for Jesus. Whereas for Plato, it was good. So they have different names for it. So once she told me about this, I recognized right away, oh yeah, this is what she's talking about. This is what they've all been talking about. And so when you read things like 1984 or Brave New World, you be careful. That's telling you how we're going to get caught in it. We'll never leave it. They're not talking to the people. They're not saying to the people, there's an out, and there is an out.
Interesting. So, yeah, it really is a spiritual kind of fight.
It is. It's totally spiritual. And it has to do with autonomous, the autonomous access to knowledge to help ourselves, to help our children, to help each other, and not to be slaves, Well,
that's the thing. There's so many people on their knees right now, they don't even know it. Right? No. And I guess you could say it's different. Look, from from TikTok to the dating apps to don't even get me started. Like, they're sucking the soul out from you. There's such a deeper experience that we could have as humans that I can tell you this, I don't know about you, but if I don't follow I guess you could call it the divine or whatever, like if I lose my way, you can always tell when you lose your way in that sense, because stuff in your life just stops working for you because you lost that connection. And then we start becoming dependent upon, I guess, like technology or what they're showing us all the time,
Yeah. So this is 100%. That's what you just said. Exactly what I'm trying to explain is that there is an organic network that we're naturally hooked into as human beings. And we've been severed from that network and told that it doesn't even exist, but it does. And, a lot of indigenous cultures have that, but look what happened to them. They got completely, some of them completely eradicated out. The ones that are still trying to maintain their traditions of being in connection, they have their ways, right? They have the, like Lakota, they give their kids the way to connect to the divinity, right? Their divinity. So Plato was basically trying to explain that in coded language, by the way, because Socrates was killed by his government. And so he was in, there were issues. Obviously, Jesus was also killed by the Romans. So when people come along and they give people the keys to the connection to, what they need,
they get
sometimes
killed.
Things happen to them. Yeah. We're like, look at Martin Luther King, they get killed. Yeah.
Or JFK telling people flat out there's secret stuff behind the scenes.
Yes.
So weird.
So a lot of my conversations with Simone were basically like, Simone, why does it keep happening? Why they're doing this? And so that's when I started to understand what Socrates and Plato were trying to get at, was that this is actually structural. And Jesus even said it was structural, because he said, look, don't throw your pearls before swine. Look, this is not everyone we're talking to. Look, I'm talking to you in coded language.
Right. Yeah. Parables and symbols and things like that.
Yeah. It's not for everyone. I hate to say it, but I honestly wish it was for everyone. Then we'd have a different kind of world, but we don't, and we got to face the fact.
Yeah, I feel like, to be honest with you, I feel like on some level, I got disconnected from that. I think we all do from time to time, right?
Oh, of course we do. Yeah, we can't help it. We live in this society of of complete disconnection all the time. So you really, really have, and I tell people this, look, part of it is you need to find your people. You need to find, in Buddhism, it's called your Sangha, right? You need to find your Sangha, your people that are going to help you stay connected.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, all right. So let me see if I got this figured out. This is the theory anyways. So from the Bible all the way up till now, we've had this like organic connection to what we call spirit or the Holy Spirit, or people call it collective consciousness and all this other stuff. Now we have AI, and AI has shown us the technological form of a collective when it comes to the internet, data transfer, all kinds of stuff, right? On a microcosmic level, I guess we could say that it's a form of technology. Maybe that we're learning later that our connection to each other, or what Jung called the collective unconscious, or whatever we call spirit, is another form of technology. With that being said, children and some of the people that have a certain character to them are the ones that are connecting, and lots of them are connecting and having these experiences, or are more prone to having these experiences.
Yes.
That's a really trippy thought, Diana.
I know.
So that means we are, just stay with me. In a sense, we are being grown, right? Like, in some sense of the word. But I think
in a good way. Yeah, I think that we've got those who can hear the message and practice it, because most of it is practicing it. You have to practice it.
Yeah.
You can't just think about it. This is like not a thinking thing; it's a doing thing. And there are those who don't care.
Yeah, they just flat out are apathetic to all of it, right? They're like,
Yeah, they just don't care.
What's on TikTok or Twitter or, whatever. And that's it, right? So.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think it's human nature for us to think that there's always a war going on? Or, you know what I mean? Like there's always it's like God and the devil, AI and consciousness, organics versus technology. Like to me, that's a bit polar. Right. So you're understanding something different here.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what I'm beginning to understand. Now you have to understand that like a person who is like a professor, we're always thinking about it. We always get new data and we change, how it progresses. Our thinking progresses. So, but look, the stuff I read when I was in my 20s, some of it now I'm just beginning to understand. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. Like I learned about it in my 20s and I was taught this in college. And when I look back, I'm like, those teachers didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't teach it the way that it needs to be taught, which is what, in my opinion, I've now found other philosophers and people in my field who understand it like I do. And we believe the same thing, that, it's rarely taught like it should have been taught. But your question is, can you repeat it again?
Is it that polar? Like, is it?
Oh, yeah, right. No, not okay. Like, this is another strange thing that I saw, is that indigenous cultures, a lot, like, I spent some time with Australian indigenous cultures, and they are connected. And they're doing the best they can to keep on to their traditions, which are incredibly sophisticated and beautiful and about connection. And they're happy about it, right? They like it. But the problem is that, the colonialization that happened to them kind of eradicated a lot of that. So they're trying to keep it alive. So the Socrates and the Plato narrative doesn't work for their culture, because they already have it. They already know about it. So the Socrates kind of template is our Western culture. It's for us.
Oh, they killed him for talk. See, I wonder if it was like he was so connected to what we were talking about that it just freaked them out and they killed him. Like, why is this? They're like,
yeah, they did.
Why is this dude
They
talking
killed
to
him.
himself, man? Like, he's crazy.
Well,
you know?
You know what they killed him for?
I thought they killed him for talking to himself. That was it, right? I mean, it could be wrong, but
No, they killed him for being an atheist and teaching atheism. He was like the least atheist person because he was talking about the good as a mystical connection that you could have.
just the character of being a good person.
Yeah. And he was talking about being in a community of people where you can connect to the good. And he got killed for that.
I did not know that. I thought, all this whole time, I thought they killed him because he was talking to himself, which I thought was pretty harsh because lots of people talk to themselves. You know?
Yeah. No. The official thing was that he was teaching atheism to children, not children, to young people.
Wow. So, which is one of the hardest things to do. And let's be honest, right? With I mean, it's not hard to be good. It's in our nature to be good, right? But everything, it's like everything wants us. Everything is pushing us in the opposite direction. It seems like. Yes,
that's why it takes people to help each other out.
So what you're saying is basically like in encounters, the people that have had encounters, you happen to pay attention to the character of these people, right? Like. These are good.
That's somewhat what I do. Yeah. I mean, I'm a scholar of religion. So when I'm looking back on the mystical great people of this tradition, well, they all had some good characters, and they were they had these experiences, I think probably because they did have these characters.
That's fascinating. Yeah. That's fascinating because here's the thing. Oh, man. I forgot. So, this is interesting to me because I think that then what are the aliens then, right? Like, are they the angels that people talked about? Are they like AI?
I think, some of them are the angels that people are talking about, definitely. Because when you look at when I talk about the primary source material, it's usually in Latin or a really obscure language. And the good thing about my profession is that I tend to know people who know these languages. So I'll just go to them and I'll say, can you please translate this to literally as literally as possible? And so I'm able to read that, these people are having these experiences with these beings and such that they identify as angels, but they look, who knows what they are.
Beings of light or whatever, right? So
yeah, little beings that are, that seem like what we would call what happens to people today. Like if you look at John Mack's book, I don't know if you've read John Mack's book about abduction, but he's talking about these beings that show up and examine people, and literally people got examined in 1500 in Europe.
Man. So have you looked into, because I know you've done some religious studies and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on, this is opposite of encounters, but not really. So what are your thoughts on ritual? What I mean by ritual is people that, people that do certain prayers or rituals, or even the Psalms, things like that. There's grimoires of people using certain names or Enochian languages and stuff and having encounters with beings too. Do you think that's the same thing?
Yeah. So, that's another thing that I learned from the AI people was that a lot of that was just cryptographic. Let's take the example of Open Sesame, right? Yeah. There was some type of language that actually impacted physical reality. So, yes. So when people, figured out these rituals and actual physical things in the environment change and happen.
Yeah, because in a sense, I think, and this is going to sound crazy, and I hope I don't offend any Christians, but I think in a sense that Jesus, taught certain rituals, like the blood, the Eucharist or whatever. Here's a sample of what you can do and it's, to us, it's like a thing that locks into our unconscious and goes, okay, I remember what this means. And it brings me back to this place. But it could also be like a program that keeps your consciousness open to certain things too, the good things, you know?
I think so too. Now that I'm looking back on, you know, the whole tradition of religion, I see religion in such a different way. I see it as molding our bodies to be receptors to, you could call it God's love or God's truth, or, you know, but that's how I see religion now.
Yeah, like some doorway to that receptor or something. That's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, just training us, you know, like in the Catholic tradition, there's like these things called Virgin Mary apparitions. And a lot of what happens during those is they say fast on Friday and do these prayers and then go and see the Eucharist. And, you know, what they're doing is these very specific bodily functions. And I think that primes your body to be receptive to that. Another thing, I had a friend who went, she's half Japanese, and she went to learn Zen in Japan. And she said the first couple of months, she thought she was going to learn about the sutras and, you know, things like that, but they didn't. He said they just spent it eating one meal a day, a vegetarian meal, and basically getting their bodies clear and doing a lot of work, like not doing anything that she thought had to do with religion at all. But actually, guess what? It has everything to do with religion.
That's trippy. Yeah, that's a trippy thought. So according to this theory, the more in touch with our character and the more in touch with the spirit, like our spirit, I guess, or the spirit, we could have an encounter. This is why. Do people have like for the most part, these people that you talk to about encounters that you studied with, are these like family people, or or does that even matter? Are they all just kind of individual whatever?
Yeah, some of them are family people. In fact, I think almost every one of them is. Let me think here. Yes, every one of them is a family person.
See, that's the thing. Like that's probably because I want to have an experience, but I don't. Like, none of these people really wanted to have these things, right? From my understanding, most of the time this happens to just good, normal people.
Yeah.
You know?
So they're just going along. They're doing, you know, what they're doing, you know, like some of them, like Dr. Whiteley, the first few chapters, she's a space psychologist and helps astronauts deal with leaving Earth. And he, being really intelligent, started to recognize that she could basically translate an Earth language and, like, you know, whale languages and stuff with some of the technologies that she used for astronauts, you know, to keep astronauts calm in space. And so she started to do this, and it changed her life and how she lived. And she became incredibly religious and spiritual. And, you know, now her family lives like that.
Really? Do you think there's something to a specific religion like Catholicism that's more tapped into? I'm just curious about Catholicism as a whole, because there's so much ritual and color and symbol, and, you know, I think it would be tapped into it, if you ask me, a little bit more, right? I grew up Baptist, but I've been in a few Catholic churches, and I got to say, when I went into the Catholic churches, I felt something different, like something a bit more powerful. I'm not saying Catholics are better or anything like that. It's just you know what I mean? Like, there's a ritual to it all. And then
Yes.
you listen to people that are exploring consciousness, whether it's through a meditation, out of body experiences, or psychedelics, and they keep running kind of into the same thing where they're being shown some kind of language. Like even Terrence McKenna, he said, well, I met these machine elves, and they, you know, machine elves, think about that with the AI stuff too.
I know, yeah.
I met these machine elves, and they told me not to give into astonishment. In other words, don't let your emotions get carried away, but harness them, right? And look at what we're doing. And they had some kind of language where they were creating like physical things, you know?
Yeah.
And all he wanted to do was bring it back to take one of those physical things. And he's like, if I could just bring one of those things into this reality, I think it would change everything. Something told him that, right? But I think he was being shown the program like you're talking about.
Yeah, I do think so. I do. So I'm of the opinion, I am a Catholic and I practice, and I'm of the opinion that whatever your religion, the religion you choose, I think that what matters is that you get in touch with the heart of it and you sincerely ask that, the good that you believe in, your God to help you. And I do believe that you'll get that help and learn. And, so I do believe, like, I know people who've gone to Chartres, or some of the cathedrals in Europe. And by the way, did you know that those cathedrals were actually created to house the presence of God? So the architecture itself was considered sacred. So a lot of people walked into those cathedrals and they didn't even hear a homily. They didn't even read a book and they were converted.
Wow. That's so cool. That's really cool, actually. So okay, I'm going to go, because we're running short of time here. I'm going to go, in the beginning of the program, I told you that some people, they have these encounters and they get terrified, right?
Yes.
You hear, I hear this word a lot on this show and in this community. Anytime someone encounters something that scares them, it's always a dark thing or a demon or something like that. Then I wonder, you say that people that have good character, they can tap into this stuff, but are they subject to bad things too, just as well? I mean, some of these, the Betty and Barney Hill thing freaked me out. I got to tell you, I don't know if it was a government, aliens or whatever, but listening to that guy scream at the top of his lungs freaked me out, So I'm not trying to freak people out, but is it always like a good thing? Not always, right?
No. Okay. No, it's not. And so this is what I've learned. It's that in the culture that we live in, which is in the United States, mostly secular, even if you go to church, you're still kind of secular, right? Because we just don't believe in these things. We don't believe in spirits, angels, demons, UFOs, aliens, things like that. We just generally don't. But people who are old time religion, when I say like old time, I mean like they still have this idea that there are certain rituals to help you through these kinds of experiences. We just don't have that infrastructure anymore. So I found there were two people in my book who are very, very Christian. One is Jose, who comes from he lived in New Mexico. He comes from a Mexican family who was very religious and prayed sometimes 4 hours a day. So when he started to experience these things, he had a structure that allowed him to deal with it. He went to a church that believed in it. His father did a deliverance of his house that cured any kind of bad issue he had. So his bad experiences were dealt with because of the religious culture that he lived within. Another man too, who in the book is very, very religious. He's actually a material scientist, and he also had the ability. But people who are randomly like secular or have no religion or just very light religion, this happens to them and they have no clue about what to do, how to protect themselves. So I always suggest, when it does happen to people, I ask them, do either of your parents have a religious tradition? And I direct them back to their religious tradition to find the people that might be able to help them.
Well, I think this is all very, very interesting. I wonder where your theory would be, where it goes from here, because you were talking about quantum, this was something Art Bell was into, quantum technology and stuff before he died. He knew it was coming. And now they're experimenting with quantum AI. And as well as I do, that technology, it just moves faster than compound interest. So how vital,
Yes.
How vital is it that we get our crap together like now and get ready for this stuff? I think if it's faster than compound interest. It could be here within the next 5 years, you know?
Yeah, I think that we need to do exactly what we've been talking about here, which is to, look into what the highest good and that we've learned about in our life, be it that of your God, if you're Catholic or Christian or Jewish, look, figure it out and start exploring. Because, I think it's urgent too.
Now, I know you're being Catholic and all, but don't you think that the Catholic Church has hidden a lot of stuff that we should know about too?
Oh, yeah.
Well?
I mean, I'm Catholic, but the reason I'm Catholic is because of people I know, like Sister Rose or Sister Isaac, these people that are actually holy, good people that have taught me from a young age how to hook in. And the hierarchy of the church, it's kind of like being an American. You're like horrified by what your politicians do, but you love your neighbor. That's how I'm Catholic.
Gotcha. Because to me, it's like, where the hell are all the... I have to research like in third-party metaphysical stuff to even find, books that about Mary Magdalene and stuff like that. Like where
I know.
I
teach classes. Yeah, I teach my students. My students are so like, I love teaching that to them because they're in the South. They don't, they probably not even ever read the Bible. And we sit down and I start up with the Bible and I say, hey, let's look at these 2 creation stories. And they're like, what? 2 creation stories? So I basically just go through it and say, oh, and did you know about Junia? She got turned into, by later translations, into a man. Actually, she's a woman. And, so really that's a revolutionary religion back in the day. So it's really fun for me to like expose the kids to their religion. And they really enjoy it.
And you don't get any slack for that and teaching that at all.
No, because I'm the expert. Like I've put in the years. And
right.
If anybody comes to me, I have had like grandmothers ask me, call me up. This is actually when I was chair of my department and said, I heard you told, my granddaughter that St. Paul was not a European white guy. Right. And I said, well, yeah. And she goes, can you please tell me who your boss is? And I said, I actually am the boss.
Hey, so you're the professor, right? That's what I would say.
And plus I was the head of my department. So she's not going to get a more, in terms of knowing about the Apostle Paul, she's not going to get a more authoritative person at the university.
Well, how much do you think that this stuff, do you think that there is like a massive amount hidden based on your studies? I do. Like I don't know if you've ever been, this is a crazy question, but someone told me to ask you this. Have you been to the Vatican Library at all, seen it or anything like that?
Oh yeah. I've studied there.
You've studied there, right? So there's got to be.
It's hard to get into. Yeah. Oh,
so
there's miles and
stuff.
miles of stuff. Yeah. And for the most part, if you have the credentials to get in, which I do, they're open and they'll let you see them. But there was one thing that I couldn't get and I knew it was there. So I kind of insisted and, went up and said, I know you have it. And finally they got the head guy of the library, and he came up to me and he called me, Professora, Lady Professora. And he said, Lady Professora, it is here. You're right. But no, you cannot see it.
Damn, why? Did you ask him why?
No, I didn't ask him why.
I would have, because I think that, like, that bothers me a lot. Like any amount of like knowledge that's hidden for some reason. And I wonder if they're just hiding it because it goes against what they're teaching, or if it's just flat out something they don't want us to know. Or I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I think there's secret societies inside the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, for sure.
Oh, definitely. Again, it's very much like our government. There are different factions. But, they're not a democracy, right? So they're older than us. So they're like really old. They've been around for a long time. So it's not like we can go there and demand something from them and say, in the name of, truth, you need to share this with us. And they're going to say, no, like you wouldn't do the same for us. So, I mean, I kind of understand where they're coming from. Let's put it that way. But by the way, they have a lot of stuff they don't even know they have.
Really? Yeah, there's
Yeah,
so many
because,
books
you know,
there. They don't know. They don't even know what's down there.
There's so many of them that they're just like unaware. So I found some of those and translated them and have them.
You're the first person I think I've had so many guests on the show. You're the first person I think that's ever even been close to the Vatican library like that. That's amazing. Actually, that's a pretty big privilege to be able to do that, isn't it?
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, it's an amazing privilege. Actually, I have a digitized version of the canonization records of the flying Saint Joseph of Cupertino. And it was just miraculous that I even got that. I think I'm the only person in the world who has that. I did have to sign an NDA with the Vatican about it. And I've also been to the Vatican Observatory, which is their space observatory, and they have their own archive. And I spent a week there doing research there.
Wow. That's cool. That's actually really cool. I'm jealous. You got to do something.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, man. Most people like dream about being able to do that stuff, and you got to go into the library, and they have their own space observatory too. That's crazy.
They do. Yeah, it's in Castle Gandolfo, which is above the Vatican, and it's where the papal gardens are. It's incredibly beautiful.
So I know it's off. Your new book Encounters is out. So I want to go back to that. Okay. I got probably a million more questions I could ask you, but what do you think is the biggest thing people are going to get out of reading this book? I mean, American Cosmic was a really cool book, so I'm excited to hear about this one.
So so this is gonna, in a sense, what I'm doing is so a lot of people are interested in Tyler's ideas about things. He was the space guy, and with all the credentials, and in American Cosmic, and he had some pretty cool ideas. And he's like a multimillionaire because of the things that he downloaded. So what happens in Encounters is I take people like him and I go directly into what they do in their lives, what they think about what they do, and their theories. And I basically do that to try to help all of us understand what these super high functioning people, how they live their lives.
Wow. So wouldn't that be crazy if I'm not saying it's not crazy. It just would be ironic to me. That's like, the answer to this whole thing is like you're a character and how you live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like AI, aliens, all this stuff. Like if you want to get to the truth or have the greatest experiences or whatever, it's really just about how you treat people, like your character.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
That's crazy. Not that that's a bad thing. I just think, isn't that that's a little bit too simple for some of the sci-fi nerds like myself,
It is really simple.
I like to sit here and freak myself out and think, oh, well, maybe we're just a big science experiment or whatever. So this is the thing. Like, what about religion? Like, do you think that the Vatican knows about the alien encounters too? Like they have some stuff they know and they're just not talking about it? That's a pretty far-fetched question, but I wonder sometimes.
It's not far-fetched. I just did an interview with the Catholic News Service about this, and you can check it out actually, or I can send you a link.
Okay.
But I actually helped them get interviews with certain scientists that are at the top doing this kind of stuff, and yeah, of course. For one thing, there's a lot of different opinions in the Vatican right now about what this is. They don't have an official opinion, but most of them are pretty open to it. And of course, they look back and see their own records and they're like, oh, yeah, that looks similar. But they don't want to I don't think anytime soon they're going to make any kind of statement other than they're open to the fact that there could be life on other planets and in other dimensions. And I do want to point this out to any of your listeners that John Paul II actually did a really interesting, what we call an encyclical, which is a letter to the bishops. It wasn't even meant for the public. It was just meant for the bishops, but it's called the Treatise on Angels, the Teaching on Angels. And he basically talks about things that are seen and unseen, like invisible presences and how they intervene in human history, almost like the control mechanism that Jacques talked about.
Wow. That's amazing. That's really cool. That gives me hope, actually, you know? So when we talk about prayers and stuff, a lot of times, you know, some people say, well, prayer is magical and things like that. I think it is. I think it definitely is. It taps into something. And look, I'm really glad that you're on the show. I know that this book is coming out. Like, I mean, you can pre-order. You can have it on Audible. You have it on Kindle. It's coming out. What is it? Is that next Wednesday? That's next Tuesday, right? The 7th?
It is, yes.
And
yes.
you already got up in the best-selling spots on it. Huh?
I know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really
and
cool.
a little scary, to tell you the truth.
Why's that? Why are you scared?
Well, when American Cosmic came out, I mean, so many things happened directly after that. It was really jolting. So I'm just hoping that the culture's changed a little bit, you know, people are less shocked by it. But I just never know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There may be. Hey, look at it like this: the more haters you got, the better, right? I'm just saying. Yes. There's going to be people. There's going to be people that don't like what you're saying or what you're doing. Always, the more sales you get and stuff. But I mean, this is a pretty cool thing. I've never met a professor that was also that teaches religion and is this big into the Catholic religion, but also is talking about UFOs and angels and AI. Has a kind of a theory about how it's all working. It's been a really, really cool show, and I can't wait to read your book. So thanks for coming on the broadcast. Is there anything else that you want to promote or tell people that where you're going to be doing, like any speaking events, or because I know you do that too sometimes?
I'll just be going on a lot of, I do speaking events. Yes. Let's see. I'm going to a conference in New York City I'll put it on my website, but it's in early December. And also, hey, I just think it was a great conversation. You had such great questions. So I really enjoy these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I try to do it live and try to do it off the cuff. That's the best way to do it, man. You know, I
totally agree.
I don't have programmed questions, but I'm just curious about all this, and I can't wait to see more of your work. I actually am looking at some of your work here on where you told me to go to, academia.edu. So you've written papers on all kinds of stuff. You know, this is really cool. So yeah, you guys go to the website too and check out our work, dwpasulka.com, and you can grab the book from there, from Barnes & Noble, from Amazon. I like to listen to the audio versions myself, and it's really cool that you got all that out. And thanks again for coming on the broadcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Very welcome. And so we're going to get out of here tonight. We'll see you guys next week. Go check out her book, grab her book, and let me know what you think too, because I'm going to probably be reading it this weekend, so we can all you can talk about it in the chat. You can email me at producer@fringe.fm. And if you want to get anybody on the show, you can also email John Marshall at fringe.fm.